Something I've learned at this point in trying to produce one of these videos a day is to stop making videos with such long introductions. Unfortunately, there's no way around that with Wild Gunman. There's a lengthy prehistory to the game that has to be talked about before I can talk about the game itself. And given that Wild Gunman is such a simple game, it's very likely that this preamble is going to take longer than describing the game itself. In the beginning, there was a successful toy company called Nintendo, and their star engineer, Gunpei Yokoi, had the idea to make a gun that shot light instead of bullets, and there would be targets that responded to that light. They made several toys based on this idea, and then decided to take it to arcades. One of these games was an electromechanical game that played video clips of actors in American frontier garb. Players would have to try to outdraw the actor on screen and gun them down before they got taken out. That was Wild Gunman's first incarnation. Nintendo continued the Western-themed light gun toys with a cowboy that would fall down when shot. It was pretty expensive, though. It cost 7,500 yen, or the equivalent of $130 today. And then Gunpei Yokoi made the Famicom. He hadn't given up on the light gun concept, although to work with televisions it would now have to look for a light rather than shoot a beam of light. And so less than a year after launch, the Nintendo kousenjuu, or ray gun, was released. It looked like an old-fashioned Colt revolver and came with a holster that kids could strap to their leg. The original packaging for it just called it Gun, and it came with Wild Gunman at first. Later on, it could be purchased separately. Nintendo made 3 games that took advantage of the light gun, all released in the space of a few months, and then it just went away. There probably wouldn't have been any more Famicom games that supported it, except it turns out the light gun was extremely popular in the United States. There aren't a lot more Famicom light gun games, and one of them came with its own custom light gun. In the end, there's a total of 6, plus the one additional one that may have light gun support. I still have to try it. I have some more things to say about the light gun on the Famicom, but let's save that for the next video. Wild Gunman plays similarly to its predecessor. The game is definitely supposed to be a quick draw competition. Players are supposed to put their gun back in their holster and wait for the enemies to march onto the screen and then say, "Fire!" That wasn't the sharpest voice sample ever, but it was certainly a first one for the Famicom. If they can draw and shoot in the time limit given, they take out the enemy. Otherwise, they get hit themselves and lose 1 life. Firing too early also loses a life. The thing is, if you're playing the game with a NES zapper like I am, there is no holster. So I'm about 5 feet back from my 12-inch television that I use to record these videos, my gun drawn and aimed center screen, and I pretty much cannot lose unless I get distracted. Playing Wild Gunman has shown me that I'm getting old. I used to be able to consistently shoot .22 seconds, but I only managed to pull it off once this time. The enemies start with a time limit around 1.5 seconds, which fluctuates a bit and drifts downward, but the fastest enemy draws in .4 seconds. Even when I'm juggling something else, I can typically pull in under .4. I played for 30 rounds to see if the time limit would get any lower, and it didn't. I basically had to throw the game to get it to stop. Game B ups the ante a bit by adding a second outlaw. Now they enter the screen from both sides, and you have to shoot them in turn. Often they'll say fire at the same time, but sometimes only one of them will say fire. You'll also probably want to prioritize for the outlaw that has the lower time limit. And here, you actually have to aim even if you aren't using the holster. Game C is the most interesting of the 3 modes. In this game, you're just waiting for outlaws to emerge from the doors or a window to shoot them. There are no innocent civilians that you could accidentally hit. It's just the outlaws. This mode adds a wrinkle of limited ammunition for the player to complete the round with. Miss too many times and you'll get a game over. Because I'm playing in such a narrow, confined space, I wound up having to cover one of my eyes and hold the gun up close to my face in order to be able to play. Not the ideal method, but it worked to get the video. In all three modes, the game just loops forever, letting the player rack up score indefinitely. If you're fast on the trigger, you really can just play forever in these games. Oddly enough, the light gun games did get re-releases. The originals are the purple boxes, while the re-releases are in a silver box and a little logo that says Video Shooting with kousenjuu series written underneath that. And on the subject of packaging, this is our first non-pulse line game. Wild Gunman is a bit of a throwback to the arcades of the 1970s and Nintendo's electromechanical light gun games. The only skill involved is a fast trigger finger. It's a historical footnote bridging shooting galleries and more advanced light gun games.